So our next news story is linked with. But it's actually a couple of ideas, and one of them that I really wanted to try and clarify. But at the top of this whole segment really is the news that a museum of the Bible, Bible Museum, has had to remove some fragments of Dead Sea Scrolls from their exhibit because they've been shown to be fake. This is a museum in Washington D.C., the Museum of the Bible.
Yep.
And they are, after following some lab tests indicating the fragments may be fake, they've decided to take them out of public view. Now, you you seem to take I wouldn't say go so far as to say a delight, but you seem to quite enjoy the fact that this also is a museum that's tied up with the Hobby Lobby.
Yes.
Yes.
Hobby Lobby chain of craft stores in America.
Mm-hmm.
I don't take it. It's not delight or. Well, actually, no. If you were coming up with a satirical plot line for everything that can go wrong in museums and archaeology and everything, it's almost like a black comedy. Because you have a family of billionaires from Oklahoma, the Green family, who are evangelical Christians, and which is fine. People are allowed to have their own beliefs and to put their beliefs into the public domain if they want to. And they have a record of campaigning on various issues, including they took on the Obama administration because they didn't want to provide contraceptive cover in company healthcare plans. So they campaign on what they believe. That's fair enough. And they have also funded the Museum of the Bible. It's a $500 million, 430,000 square foot museum building close to the Capitol in Washington. So it's designed to be absolutely on the Washington tourist itinerary.
Nothing quite like separating church and state, is there?
Absolutely nothing quite like it's sort of, with the views of the Capitol, and the Capitol can presumably look back, and it's one of those sort of we know where you live buildings, I think. But no, and obviously they've got 430,000 square feet to populate with artifacts from scratch. They started collecting, and being billionaires, the dealer world suddenly realised that here was a potentially very lucrative client, and as it turned out, a client who wasn't too particular about asking questions. I have to be a little bit careful here.
In a previous watching brief, we have highlighted how they got into hot water, didn't they?
They got into more than hot water, Mark. They got into a major legal problem with the U.S. Department of Justice because they were importing stolen artifacts from Iraq.
Okay. Well, you said you were looking for careful words. Okay.
No, I can say this because it's that case
that
is
a matter of fact. Yes.
They actually paid. Hang on, just let me check up. They paid a substantial amount of money. Yeah, this was a $1.6 million deal for 5,548 objects. Which they ended up paying a $3 million fine and had to return.
But nonetheless, the meat of this particular story is surrounding the fact that this loose relationship with the artifact has led them to purchase forged fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Presumably, someone had manufactured these to sell to them. Specifically for the museum, I guess. In some respects, you could paint them as very wealthy victims in this instance, I suppose.
Or people with more money than sense.
Potentially.
That they didn't do their due diligence.
Well, in the CNN article on this particular story, there are other news providers that we'll link to as well below. Now scholars say the Dead Sea forgeries could be part of the most significant sham in biblical archaeology since the so-called Gospel of Jesus' Wife a fiasco that hoodwinked a Harvard scholar and made worldwide news in 2012. Some scholars estimate as many 70 forged fragments have hit the market since 2002. Is this the modern day true cross? Is that what we're dealing with? Is this, like how bits of wood ended up everywhere? And...
I think you've nailed it there, because kind of phrase. You see what I did there? He said rapidly recovering. No, in all seriousness, no. I think this is exactly what we are dealing with, because I think however much it's dressed up as a legitimate museum, this is a museum with an agenda. This is a family with an agenda.
Yeah,
and therefore, maybe the eyes of faith have blinded them to the ways they can be taken for a ride by unscrupulous dealers and forgers in the art world and the fringes of the art and antiquities world, who are looking for a mark. And I have to say, you mentioned CNN. This was we need to credit CNN here, because it was a CNN investigation that opened this up. But I think there's a sense of sort of hurt and disbelief in the Greens' statement when all this came out, because the fragments CNN raised, the CNN investigative team raised the issue that these might be forged. These fragments of Dead Sea Scroll might be forged. And remember, the Dead Sea Scrolls are the flagship artifact of biblical archaeology. They have their very own section, the very own section of the museum, National Museum in Jerusalem, the Shrine of the Book, which is dedicated to them. So there's the idea that there's very little. They've been surrounded by this mystique and mystery since they turned up in the 1940s.
Yeah.
There've been conspiracy theories about the lost gospels that haven't been properly translated because they blow up the Catholic Church and things like that. Think Da Vinci Code Plus.
Stigmata. That's a good movie.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. This is it. This is part of popular culture now.
Yeah.
And so therefore, these artifacts, this part of biblical scholarship has a real reach and resonance, and people want to buy into it.
Yeah.
And if you've got a particular belief set, like the Greens, as the Greens appear to,
or frankly, I mean, we shouldn't. This has nothing to do with their beliefs in some respects. I mean, frankly, even if you don't have that belief set, you can still be fascinated by those artifacts. If that's what I mean. So if you want them, then you might be more gullible, and you might buy them for your museum. I'm sure their faith has an element in how they spend, but we shouldn't. I suppose what I'm saying is, we're not saying stupid Christians. We're saying gullible people who want to collect things.
Absolutely. I can think of similar scams that are done, albeit on a smaller scale. For example, in people who collect militaria.
Yeah, exactly.
If you go onto eBay, other auction sites are available. There are whole sections on forged material that might be available. More Nazi Party daggers have been made since the war than were made during the war. I think probably most of them in China and Hong Kong. It's something that happens when there's a market. People will seek to supply it, and if they can't supply it with the real stuff, they'll fake it.
Exactly. Well, speaking of which, though, I'd just like to tag on to the end of this segment a bit of an analysis of an extra thing that's happened surrounding this story. I've seen on Facebook and also in the comments on various news articles people saying, well, of course they're fake. Now can we finally declare the Dead Sea Scrolls as fake? And the problem is no, there's a misunderstanding there. These fragments have been faked. They are forgeries based on a real find, or trying to link themselves to a real find. So this is not a news article that's saying that the Dead Sea Scrolls are fake, and there's no reason from these forgeries to make that presumption. So that's just a little thing I'd just like to highlight there.
And exactly, and they appear to have been quite sophisticated fakes, because what the fakers have done is take papyrus fragments right period,
Hmm.
and either they were blank or they scraped the original
The ink off. Yeah.
ink
Yeah.
off and
Hmm.
and tried to create facsimiles of the original inks. But it appears to be the inks that are the giveaway in this, as in most art forgeries. The materials are very difficult to replicate now in the 21st century.
And also in the post-nuclear age as well.
That's
There are
right.
various tests. Yes.
Exactly, and it's
Hmm.
so it is very very hard now to fool modern forensics
Hmm.
in the way that might have been possible even 20 years ago, more possible even 20 years ago. But obviously, in this case, it succeeded. I think to be fair as well, we need to quote a spokesperson for the museum, a man called Geoffrey Cloher, who's the chief curatorial officer for the Museum of the Bible. So on the academic side rather than the PR side,
Hmm.
who told CNN, although we hope the testing would render different results, this is an opportunity to educate the public on the importance of verifying the authenticity of rare biblical. The elaborate testing
because
process
because
undertaken, the elaborate testing process undertaken, and our commitment to transparency. Yeah, they should have done that before they went on display.
But also the idea of this being like a public service announcement. Remember, people, when you're buying international, treasures, have them
Yes,
tested.
yes.
It's a whole other world.
Again, Mr. Cloher said, as an educational institution entrusted with cultural heritage, the ones that they haven't been forced to return because they were illegally exported, we won't go there.
Hmm.
The museum upholds and adheres to all museum and ethical guidelines on collection, care, research, and display.
Well, that's nice to know.
I think we need to end on that point,
I think so.
and our viewer will draw their own conclusions.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Allegedly, sorry. So